Peace. Welcome to Queen L LLC. This is Queen L. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, today's video is looking a bit different. If you have never seen any of my videos, then welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have seen any of my other videos, you know that the background is totally different than what it usually is. Where I'm at right now recording, it just happens to be the quietest place in my home right now at this moment. So it's I'm actually sitting on the floor right now, just a whole different vibe. Okay, so today's video is regarding the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Virgo, and we are actually in the shadow period right now. If you're not familiar with shadow period, then I will link my video above. It may have been the last Mercury retrograde shadow period that we were in, because we do have several Mercury retrogrades each year. So yeah, the shadow period, there's a pre-shadow period right before the actual retrograde takes place, and then a post-shadow period that occurs just after the planet has returned direct. So what does all of that mean? In short, the shadow period is just the energy that is being exuded by that planet being in retrograde, and that we are feeling here on Earth. We're feeling it for a certain period of time before and after that planetary event actually takes place. Now, the shadow period, it differs depending on the actual planetary event that's taking place. A lot of times, one thing that makes a big difference is how long the retrograde is, or whatever planetary event, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a retrograde for us to have a shadow period, like the moon. So when we have our different lunar cycles, the moon moves through its orbit the quickest out of the planetary bodies. And the moon, let's say we're approaching a full moon. So we had a full moon recently. And for the full moon, the shadow period is approximately 3 days before and 3 days after the full moon takes place. And if you follow any lunar phases, you know that the full moon is just one day, and then the next day the moon is no longer at 100% illumination. It starts trickling down from that point on until we have the new moon. But so that's a 3 day pre and post shadow period. The Mercury retrograde takes place always for about 3 weeks, and the pre and post shadow period for Mercury retrograde, it is typically 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after the retrograde actually takes place. For some of our planets that have really long orbits around the sun, for instance, let's say Pluto. Pluto has a 248-year orbit around the sun. So Pluto, when it goes into retrograde, the shadow period is for months, or at least 1 month, but it's an extended period of time before and after the retrograde. And by definition, a planet is in retrograde when it seemingly goes in reverse in its orbit in our galaxy. So we have several retrogrades taking place. I've posted videos on them, but we have more planets going into retrograde coming up, and Mercury is one of them. So I have my planner here with my notes, since I'm not in front of my computer and my monitors at my desk where I'm able to look at all the things at the same time. So I have everything jotted down here. So if you see me glancing down or glancing over, that's what I'm looking at, just so I can stay on track. Now, with Mercury being in Virgo for this retrograde. First, what is a Mercury retrograde? Now, I feel like Mercury retrograde, it gets a bad rap. Now, there are some um, some negative aspects to you can give negative aspects to anything really. Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is our communication planet. When Mercury is in retrograde, it gives a bit of confusion. It's not that chaotic energy that a lot of people um, like to assign to a Mercury retrograde or attach to it. But there can be a bit of communication confusion because it's a communication planet. But it's just something to be mindful of. Retrogrades essentially are a time for us to reset, to reflect, to review our actions over the most recent period of time, and to make some tweaks, modifications that are necessary for our overall wellness. Now, with this retrograde really overlapping other retrogrades that we have taken place, specifically Pluto retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde. Um, those retrogrades are giving more of a transformative energy as far as looking back over your life in the most recent years and determining, and also Venus retrograde, and determining what you have learned, the lessons you've learned, and making essential changes to just for your overall well being and the betterment of you in different areas depending on the planet. Now, with this Mercury retrograde, so the shadow period started August 3rd, so we're already in the shadow period. Mercury rules Virgo. So, since Mercury rules Virgo, every zodiac sign has a planetary ruler. And with Mercury ruling Virgo and the Mercury retrograde taking place in the sign of Virgo, which hasn't happened since 2016, the energy is more enhanced and more heightened with this particular retrograde. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, I will say the retrograde is taking place from August 23rd to September 5th. So, to September 15th. So, like I said, it's a lot of overlapping energy with the multiple retrogrades, and we still have more. Uranus retrograde is coming right after this one. And then Jupiter retrograde is taking place September 4th. So, even though the actual retrograde for Mercury is taking place over about 3 weeks, with the pre and post shadow periods both taking place for 2 weeks respectively, that means that the energy will be felt for approximately 7 weeks, from August 3rd all the way to September 30th. So that's something to keep in mind. So some notes that I have with regard to how to work with this energy is use this time to question everything. Question things in your day-to-day. Question who you are and why you are who you are. What makes you who you are. I will say that I'm a firm believer as an astrologer in really looking at your own personal chart. A lot of times we like to, we find the mirror to us in others. We find things that we don't like about ourselves or that irk us within ourselves, and we see those things in others, and that's what we nitpick about. Don't nitpick about others, and I will say almost nitpick yourself right now, not to tear yourself apart, not to really, have a pity party and have this, major self-deprecating energy, but this is a time to really identify these, traits within ourselves, do that shadow work, and really face ourselves. Yes, we're in this shadow period, so a lot of shadow going on, but definitely do the work because the work is necessary for our growth. Tap into all of this retrograde energy to really, just to really do the work. Okay. This is a time to, we always talk about practicing discernment in our dealings with others, and that's definitely relevant. That's definitely something that we should do. That's sage advice. But this is also a time, specifically with this shadow period and throughout Mercury retrograde in Virgo, to be discerning with yourself, the choices that you make, the actions that you project, the things that you let come out of your mouth, um, the interactions that you have with others, even in a business standpoint, because Mercury retrograde, we talk about any type of legal or contractual interaction or dealings that you have with others, the companies that you do business with, any place of employment that you have, just any documentation, any form of communication, orally, written, just be very discerning. And this is fine time to do that, to start that, not just to wait until August 23rd when we have the retrograde taking place, but to start right now. So depending on the source, you might read where shadow periods start at the 3rd or the 4th. It really depends on your time zone in the world, but this is a fine time to start just really paying attention. Open your eyes and be really mindful right now with regard to what you say and how you interact with the world. Okay, let's play chess and not checkers. You don't necessarily want to be reactive in life and just constantly having to double back or regroup after the fact. You definitely want to be more proactive in the way that you communicate. Okay, so it's not just about activating your throat chakra. That is awesome, but it's in the way that you use your voice as well. Okay, that's really important, and that's where that discernment comes in. Double check. Okay, some questions that I have that I wanted us to use during this time is there value in what I want to say? Is there value in what I have to say, what I feel urged to say? Also, what is the intent behind what I am saying? A lot of times we like to get our point across. We like to, I have to have my say. I have to let them know. I have to speak my mind. But to be an effective communicator, not just to communicate, but to be an effective communicator, it's important to identify what is your intent, what's your purpose, what's your reason for saying what you're saying, and just thinking about the impact with regard to what you have to say. Okay, so that is all I have for today. Definitely check out my weekly astrology videos as well as my new daily astrology videos on TT. My weekly astrology is here on YouTube. So thank you so much. Stay in tune and I will be in touch. Peace. Ashe.